Hello again. It is that 90s baseball pod powered by Access Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can find me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. And joining me, as always, is Gregg Olson. You can find him on Twitter at GREGGOLSON30. Gregg, did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I did. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Went up to Fargo. It was 3 degrees the morning we woke up on Thursday, so that was pretty cool.
Is it just like the movie?
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's exactly like that. Yeah. A guy who I'm sure does not miss Minnesota weather, although he probably didn't have to deal with it too much because he played in the Metrodome, is Matt Walbeck, former Twins catcher, former big league catcher for a number of teams and a number of seasons. Matt, how we doing?
Doing great, Brandon. Thanks for having me, Gregg. Good to see you.
Welcome, Matt. Nice to see you as well.
Yeah, we're excited to have anytime we can have a guest is fun for us because it takes the pressure off Gregg and me from having to be very interesting. And I feel like other than relievers, catchers have some of the best personalities or coolest personalities in baseball. And that's not just a now thing. It's been for a long time. My personal favorite, and I'll be honest with you, I've had really good rapport with Twins backup catchers the last few years. So Chris Jimenez and Bobby Wilson, even Mitch Garver for a while there when he was backing up Jason Castro. You guys just see the game a different way, and I think it's a lot of fun. You know, you're the only ones on the field facing that direction and wearing a uniform, you know, the umpires too. But it's fun to me to hear how catchers see the game. And two, I'd like to hear about what you're doing right now because I understand you're not out of the catching game, so to speak.
Well, no, I mean, I'm actually still playing men's league baseball. I'm in the off season right now. So yeah, I'm playing in a 50 and over league here in Sacramento.
Really?
And yeah, MSBL. It's a good time. So it keeps me in shape. And then, you know, I had, after I retired from the pro game in 2011, I started my own baseball academy and started doing lessons, and it grew into more of a following. And then, built a business partnership with a guy named Glenn Gross, and he started running teams, and that turned into a larger form of instruction. And then we got a facility and built that up pretty good. And then when COVID hit, things certainly slowed down. So we've been building some software in the background to sort of assess players. So being able to give them objective measurements. So we ended up closing the brick and mortar, and we've moved on to an online training system. I have an app called GoWalbeck.com. It's a web-based app with hundreds of videos and drop-down menus for playlists and things like that for coaches and players and parents. And so that's been going really well. And I'm still working with a group of players on Zoom through an invite-only basis and group training sessions. It's age appropriate or age similar and season appropriate drills. Married with 3 kids. My oldest son is out of college. He's working for Cisco in San Jose. I've got a daughter at University of Oklahoma. She's a sophomore, and a freshman daughter here. And so things are going well, just doing the best I can and still love baseball.
Speaking of college, Mr. Olson, did I see someone's got a commit in their house right now?
Yeah, my youngest is coming to Auburn.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah, committed a couple of years ago, and they had him made his own video, so it was pretty good. It was wow. He's unique in a little bit of a Marcus Stroman. So if you get a chance to see Ryan Olson somewhere on Facebook or something, Matt, it's a couple of leg kicks I wouldn't recommend, a little bit of Louis Tiant, and then he did a Bronson Arroyo full straight on leg kick. So entertaining.
How about his curveball? Does he have the nasty hammer like his dad?
I'm trying to get him to back off the velocity on it so it spins. It's just, everybody wants to throw everything hard, and it's like I'm going, this is not a high velocity pitch. We can make it into one, but you got to start backwards and then work forward. And so still working.
How does he hold it? How did you hold your curveball, and how does he hold his curveball?
I held, it's funny because I'll talk to, the Auburn baseball team every once in a while, and it'll be like, nobody can tell you what grip is right. If something fits with you, it's yours. This whole thing is your thing. So I'm going to show you a bunch of grips. And if you don't like any of them, go do whatever you want. I'm going to give you suggestions. And so my fingers, I would be wrapped around the horseshoe a little bit on the edge, just so it was kind of hooked. And then the next week, my finger would feel fat. So then I'd roll it to the other side of the horseshoe.
Wow.
And just kind of rotate it, and that would feel good. And then somewhere around 93, I went against all conventional wisdom and went right on the horseshoe and hooked around it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're supposed to use the horseshoe to create the four seams and get more bite, but I actually had a better feel, better fit, completely hooking the horseshoe.
Interesting.
And
yeah, I faced you a couple times, and it was, man, that thing was tough. You could sit on it and still not hit it,
Yeah, we pulled the numbers for that. 0 for 4 with a strikeout, but it takes there's about 200 guys who faced Ole at least 4 times, so I don't think it's unusual for someone to have struck out against him. He was pretty nasty.
He was tough. He was tough. He had good angle and the mound presence too. So there was a lot that goes into that.
Now,
competition when you're facing guys like Ole.
Right. Now, you mentioned one of your kids is at Oklahoma. How are they handling the Lincoln Riley news?
Yeah, no, I know. We were kind
of
shocked to hear about that. Yeah, not great. We were shocked to hear about that. I guess he's taking Rattler with him. Is that true? I don't know if there's any.
He's in the portal. Yeah. Every time I think of the transfer portal, I think of that scene in Spaceballs where the guy gets beamed down and his head's on backwards. So I always think of players going into the transfer portal like that because my brain is broken. And so, I'd say there's a decent chance Rattler ends up with him. But the carousel right now is crazy with Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame and all that. Obviously we're not here to talk about college football, but they're about to join Oklahoma's about to join the SEC, join all these guys, aren't they?
Yep. In a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, it sounded like Riley didn't want
25, I think.
Yeah, something like that, maybe 3 years.
Yeah, so Matt, this is normally what we get. Brandon will say something, and then he'll reference an old movie, and the only people that have watched it are me and him, and now you.
Or
that's okay.
Or you will bring up a baseball or any movie that anyone should have seen that I haven't seen, like let's say A Few Good Men or Major League.
Dreams.
I've seen Field of Dreams. No. That's false advertising. I haven't seen Major League. I've seen Field of Dreams.
You haven't seen For the Love of the Game either.
This is probably when Matt's just going to disconnect and realize that this is not up his alley. But
it's perfect.
This is what I usually deal with, Matt. How do you feel about Gus in For the Love of the Game?
Jeez. I mean, I don't know. I like For Love of the Game. That was my favorite scene in that movie was when he turned off the mechanism. Right.
Yep.
And you remember, did you ever get that feeling? I mean, especially when you're playing at Yankee Stadium, I can think back to times when Rivera was on the mound and the place was just a roar. And then all of a sudden you just stop hearing things. I kind of miss that.
So you were the same way at the plate.
The same way at the plate. Yeah. Or behind the plate. You would just, your fight or flight or some sort of response would hit. And you just wouldn't hear anything. And it would just become, you'd have to just trust your practice and just, one pitch at a time. And you just kind of react. I'm sure it was different as a pitcher where you had to go through your delivery, whereas a hitter or a catcher, it's sort of a reaction, Yeah.
No, I never had to clear the mechanism, but, friends would say, okay, you're playing in front of Yankee Stadium. There's 55,000 people. What, how loud is it? And I was like, I don't hear anything.
Yeah.
I was like, if I got to Montreal and there's 2,000 people and the one with the dugout has got my phone number and all my kids' names.
Yeah.
I heard every word he said. I was about to throw a dot off of him, but 55,000 people, you don't hear anything. And for me, I was always I had one checkpoint and then it was time to go, so I'd come up, I'd have a little bit of a tap on the elbow with my left leg. And that was my checkpoint to get to, and I knew I was going to be on time after that.
You just got to trust it and let it go.
That's funny. So I kind of wanted, I didn't mean to throw the Gus, from the, but your presence when you were in the game and you brought this intelligence factor as a partner, how much detail did you go into pregame hitter versus pitcher, or just did you kind of stay on what the book was on each hitter?
Well, it depended. A lot of it depends on the pitcher. And I think that's what kept me around for as long as I played, was working with like a Jack McDowell, for example. When I was catching Jack, he was a one pitch at a time guy, and he didn't necessarily want to hear too much about what the hitter's strengths were. He wanted to focus more on reading swings. And so for catching Jack, it was pretty simple. If the guy was late, we'd stay hard. If he was out in front, we'd stay soft. I mean, there was no secret. He had the split, a breaking ball, and a fastball. And so we just kind of read swings. When I was catching Tim Belcher, it was totally different. I mean, he was carrying around a laptop when they first came out in the late 90s. And he'd keep spreadsheets, and he would, before the game, he would put a spreadsheet and notes on my chair. And he had listed out every batter in the lineup, one of three ways that we were going to pitch him. And he was either pounding, splitting guys. He was going to make them reach. And then he had another guy where he might just mix it up altogether, but it was very simple. And I kept thinking to myself, like, damn, man, if these guys ever knew how you were pitching them, it would, but still he committed to what he was pitching and what he was throwing. And then Randy Myers, he was fastball away. That is it. And he goes, and I don't ever want to see you without your half of your body off the plate. So I didn't believe in attacking, focusing so much on the hitter as I wanted to work with the pitcher and make sure that whatever they threw with commitment, and getting that pitcher to believe in what I was putting down had purpose. And so a lot of the scouting reports and things like that, I mean, of course you'd have to do certain things, like with Frank Thomas. I mean, we all knew if you pounded him inside, he was an out, and he was one of the best breaking ball hitters. I don't know how you did against him with your curveball, but man, I tell you what, as soon as you thought you had him set up for a breaking ball, it was just blasted. So there were certain guys you knew in the league. It's fun to talk to you about, how you used to face guys, but like Edgar Martinez, his kryptonite was that front door slider. If you could just throw him front door sliders and fastballs down the middle, I'd say, and I'd raise my hand in the meeting and go, hey, this guy is going to wear you out if you try to pitch to him. You've got to throw him something he's not looking for, down the middle and front door sliders. And sure enough, man, we'd throw him just 87 mile an hour heaters down the middle, and he'd pop it up ground. It was almost like you didn't know what to do with it. Same thing with Ichiro early in his career. It was the same thing. I mean, he'd fight you for 14 pitches, which is what you'd want to throw to get out of an inning. And then screw it, man, just make him hit it first pitch. And it was almost like those guys wouldn't know how to do things. And then you'd face some guy that just came up from Double-A, and he'd just be all over, you wouldn't know how to pitch certain guys. So I don't know. I think too much thinking, and long-winded answer here, is not good. And that's like when I see these catchers with their wristbands and all this stepping off and all this bullshit with they're trying to just make this game so damn difficult. It's difficult as it is. Just there's still a certain way to attack hitters. And, I think the simpler we make it, the more enjoyable it is too.
How long? So as a guy who moved around a little bit, like how long did it take before you were on one team and you felt like you had a pretty good grasp of that team's pitchers? Because you mentioned what Randy Myers liked, and you mentioned what Tim Belcher liked. And to remember all that and index all that in your mind has to take time, and it has to be a development of relationships. And I think a lot of times we forget it's a relationship business. It's a relationship game. Are you ever comfortable with where you're at in that relationship? Or is, you look at, if we're on Baseball Reference, a team will have 25 pitchers in a year just because of the churn of the game. Is it just a constant stream of, I'm learning all these guys and continuing to learn? Or do you ever get comfortable with some guys or on some team at some point in your first season there?
Well, as a professional, I wouldn't have been there had I not been able to immediately adapt to each pitcher. And so you have to, that's why I think sitting next to them in the dugout, asking them questions like, hey, when do you like me to move with a runner on second? What kind of target do you like? How, and I would even have things that I wouldn't tell them that I knew that they liked, like how I threw the ball back to them, or how long I would hold the ball before I threw it back to them. Or if I go out and talk to them, sometimes I would yell at guys and cuss at them, or not saying anything. My favorite visits are when I go out there and just stare at them and just look at them and what? I go, nothing. And I turn around and walk back just to shake them up and get them in there. It wasn't until I caught or played for Mike Scioscia in Anaheim that I really learned how to relate to pitchers and call a game, and, taking down notes. And I think if the pitcher knows that you truly do care about them and you're there to serve them, They're going to open up to you and give you more of who they are as a person in a trust way that becomes sort of a brotherhood. And once they know that, like they'll do anything. And that's where you have to earn that trust. It just takes time. And I was able to earn trust, especially when pitchers would block balls. I didn't give a shit what the score was. I was knocking it down. I was doing what I could to save that guy's runs. I didn't care about anything except my pitcher. Yeah. And if we had to hit a guy, that I never once had a batter get out to the pitcher's mound. We hit Albert Bell one time. Ooh. And he didn't want to go to first base.
I remember that.
We were in Baltimore and he had 3 home runs in that game. He took Chuck Finley deep, Mike Holtz, Troy Percival to tie it in the 9th. Yeah. Wow. He hit a 2-run bomb. He hit a 2-run bomb with 2 outs in the 9th, I believe. And then Shigetoshi Hasagawa came up with the runner on first. Didn't have to tell him. Boom, drilled him. It's like, no, man. Why we didn't walk him, I don't know. But there was a runner on first. And so Shiggy didn't mess around. He threw one right up here and just nailed him. And Albert just stood there. He says, I'm not going to first. And he turns to me and he goes, hey, you go out there and you tell that motherfucker to throw me something I can hit. I'm like, dude. And so now I realize, I'm like, well, he's a very intelligent man, Albert is.
Yes,
and
he is.
Apparently he would do like the New York Times crossword puzzles and he was very intelligent. So I kind of said, hey, look, I speak a little Spanish, but I don't speak Japanese. I don't know if he'll understand me. And that kind of shook him up a little bit. It kind of gave him a second. And then by then the manager and the pitching coach came out and they kind of settled him down a little bit. And then he finally reluctantly went to first base and then Cal Ripken came up and hit a walk-off single, and that was it. Of course he did.
Let me ask you this. What was it like being a catcher, playing for a catcher like Scioscia? Because, from my point of view, we see a lot of catchers become managers, and then we also start thinking about like future managerial candidates as catchers and kind of tying those things together. But was that an especially eye-opening experience for you to play as a veteran catcher for a guy who caught as long as he did? Because obviously then too, he managed for as long as he did. Lifers like that have a lot to say even before they're catchers. What was it like to be a catcher playing for a catcher?
Oh, it was great. It was awesome. I mean, I always looked up to Mike as a younger little leaguer, and I had the utmost respect for him. And he taught me and Benji Molina. Benji Molina came in that year as a rookie, and I kind of took him under my wing. And that was my first year of really being a true backup to a guy. And he just taught me stuff that he learned from Johnny Roseboro and all the history from the Dodgers that he had accumulated, all that knowledge, and shared it with me. And it was amazing. The only thing that I didn't like that he wanted me to do was take my body and sit on home plate when the guys were trying to score. Oh. Yeah, I didn't like that. I wouldn't bail out from collisions at home plate, but I like to do more of a sort of a judo approach where they'd come in and I'd like roll with them, or I'd show them the plate and then I'd take it away, but not so. She wanted to have us sit on the plate. In fact, he'd have Mickey Hatcher run us over as part of catching training. And, we'd have to practice laying on the plate or, kneeling on it and getting rolled over by Mickey Hatcher. But no, overall, it was a fantastic experience, and just an honor to play for him.
I feel like Benji Molina is better built for those kind of collisions than you back in those days.
Yeah, for sure. I was a lightweight back in the day. Yeah. 185, 190.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you aren't still, but yeah, back in those days behind the plate, they had some guys that could really go. So you get, we don't stick strictly to the 90s. You were drafted in the 80s, so we're going to talk about that for a second here. Cubbies. How do you get on the radar of the Cubbies? And again, too, you debut for them, 6-7 years later before you're traded to the Twins. But it's a storied franchise that was going through some stuff, and you end up on their radar. How does that happen?
So I was drafted in 87 in the 8th round, and I signed out of high school. And my third year in pro ball, I was in Peoria playing for the Chiefs in the Midwest League. We were in Cedar Rapids. Jeff Branson was on second base, and I think Eddie Taubensee hit a ball through the right side. Branson comes around third. I'm deking him. I'm pretending like there's not going to be a play at the plate. Big mistake. And I'm just kind of standing there, and I catch the ball, and I step back with my left foot with my toe pointed towards right center, and Brano just crushes me and blows out my ACL and my MCL. He feels terrible. I'm telling him, dude, that was my fault. I screwed up. And so during the time it took me to rehab my knee, I asked the Cubs if I could practice switch hitting because I wanted to come back as a switch hitter instead of a wounded catcher. And they're like, yeah, sure, go for it. So I started switch hitting, and it clicked. You know, it didn't click until I talked to Bill Harford, and I kind of wanted to give it up. And he told me, just don't focus on the result, just focus on getting through the season, do the best you can, and then we'll reassess it. That was an A-ball in the Carolina League in 91. In 92, I went to Charlotte and played in the Southern League. I was an all-star. I hit 300 and then got put on the 40-man because Girardi wasn't protected, and the Rockies picked him up in the expansion draft. And so I got to go to spring training in 93, and Ryan Sandberg had an arm injury, broke his arm, got hit by a pitch, I think, or sliding or something, opened up an extra spot on the team. And they're like, hey, we're going to carry a third catcher. Congratulations, you know, in spring training. So it was Rick Wilkins, Steve Lake, and myself. And, you know, so I got on the radar there and had a pretty good year. I got sent down a month later to AAA, got called back up, and, you know, just good fortune, timing with the Rule 5, you know, the expansion draft. I think when the Marlins and the Rockies came in, I don't know if I would have had a chance otherwise. And, you know, then going to Minnesota, and from there on, you know, I just chipped away.
Wilkins had one of the most amazing one-off seasons I think we've seen from a catcher. I'm trying to think of who else even compares, maybe a Todd Hundley, but that 1993 season for Rick Wilkins was incredible. And you got to see at least some of it up close and personal.
Yeah, he was a stud. I mean, he hit 30 bombs that year, I think. Sammy Sosa was on that team also. He was 30-30. Of course, you got Gracie. And, you know, Sean Dunston. So it was a good team. And, you know, Wilkie had a good year that year. After that, you know, he had, I think, an injury, and, you know, this game will spit you out in a hurry. You know,
what's it like?
Really, it'll humble you.
What's it like debuting at Wrigley? Because I didn't go to Wrigley until I was 30. I was 32 before I ever even saw Wrigley. It's got to be pretty impressive as a 20-something, knowing all the history that's happened at that point in that stadium. And then again, too, when I was in there, I was equally parts like overwhelmed and then like underwhelmed. Like this is Wrigley. This is the Wrigley everybody talks about. But at the same time, like, holy crap, this is still awesome.
Yeah, no, it was like church. And I was there in the beginning of the season. The ivy wasn't quite on the wall yet. My first day in the big leagues, I was staying at the hotel at the Westin and took a cab to Wrigley. I was thinking I was going to be right on time. I was early. I was like 2.5 hours early. And Yosh Kawano, the clubhouse guy, just aired me out. I couldn't believe it. I don't know if you've heard of Yosh Kawano, but he was just this amazing guy, a clubhouse attendant. I had been in the game since Babe Ruth, literally has a picture with Babe Ruth. He's got this little Gilligan's Island hat, a big fat cigar. He's about 5'2". And he goes, what the hell are you doing here so early? I said, I'm getting ready for the game. He goes, get out of here. Don't let me see you. You're here too early as a rookie. I was like, okay. So, but so third day I got to play against, and we were facing Avery and the Braves, you know, it was back when they were super good. And I ended up, you know, getting a swing and bunt hit, my third at bat. Or fourth at bat, and it was, but it was. I remember screaming when I went out to the field when they said, you know, here come the Chicago Cubs. It was cold, and I mean, gosh, getting to play for the Cubs, it was like you're a celebrity superstar anywhere you go there. I mean, I was just breaking out my old Murphy's Letterman jacket. So after my first home run against the Phillies, the guys took me across the street to the bar over there, Murphy's, and the owner handed me a Letterman jacket. And, you know, they just really, being a Cubs, there's nothing like it.
Wow. Did either of you guys deal with Wayne Hathaway when you were with the Twins?
I did. Yeah.
I was going to say, you explaining Yosh sounds a little bit to me like Big Fella with the Twins.
Yeah. Oli, do you know him?
No, I don't.
Oh man, you missed
it.
Yeah,
he was a personality. He's like a cartoon character, great big mustache, Coke bottle glasses that were tinted. And
it's like if Yosemite Sam had an illegitimate brother.
Yeah. He was a beauty. He'd let you know too. He'd kind of give you shit if you weren't doing it right, you know, playing right. Like coming from a clubby. Yeah.
Don't blame yourself. Blame the scout who signed you, Biggie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly what he said. He passed away a couple years ago, but he was unbelievable. Yeah. So I just love though, like that the game has that kind of character in it. And so every time I hear somebody bring up that, I have to really relate to who I've seen here in Minnesota. And you know, Big Fella's path is well worn.
I can't get over the fact that you got kicked out of the clubhouse because you were there too early.
Yeah, he wanted to kick. I refused to leave. I went around the corner and hid from him. But yeah, he warned me, don't ever do that again. Yep.
That happened to me at Wrigley Field too, but for a different reason. So I covered a series at Wrigley for the first time in 2018. It was that crazy. It was like 100 and some degrees, and all the guys were dropping like flies. Williams Estadio and Logan Morrison had to play in the outfield because all these guys were getting sick with heat-related illnesses. And for the first game, I had to figure out where the clubhouse access was. And for someone who's never been to Wrigley, there's the catwalk to get up to the press box, and you go down a hallway, and then you cut across and go up into the clubhouse for the visitor clubhouse. I don't know where all this stuff is. So I'm asking stadium workers, and they're like, oh, I think it's over there. So I go down the steps, and I'm like, oh, finally, I'm at the front door of the clubhouse, like Target Field, which has a front door where everybody goes in. And the guy goes, what are you doing here? And I'm like, clubhouse availability. And I look over, and Randy Rosario, who played for the Twins, walks up, shows the guy his ID, and goes in. They'd sent me to the players' entrance. I wound up at the players' entrance at Wrigley Field, and I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. So I had my own experience with showing up to the wrong place at the wrong time at Wrigley Field.
All right, Matt, you got to have a TK story or two.
Yeah, I've got quite a few. He wasn't too fond of rookies, no. You know what I mean? So one time he had me out there early because I wasn't hitting well, and was just giving me the business all the way down those stairs. Remember, we'd have to go up and down those stairs at the Metrodome, and it took forever, and he's carrying the bucket. He's like, I can't believe I have to do this. And so he's got me out there right before we stretch, and he puts the bucket down and the tee down, and he wants me to start lifting my leg and try to hit like Kirby Puckett. And man, he gets frustrated and just ends up kind of ugly where, he says, kind of gives me a little shove and says, you're not balanced, get out of here. So a lot of times he'd give you that stuff, but hard on rookies. A lot of the time, most of the time we deserved it. But as far as the way he managed, you can't say enough about how well he would handle his bullpen. I mean, you even look at like an Eddie Guardado who had all those appearances, but still stayed strong. He really knew his players. He knew how to put them in a situation where they would succeed. But he was getting frustrated, Bully, towards the end of that. We were kind of not very good. And so he struggled, I think, with all of that, considering he'd just come off 2 World Series wins. Yeah. What about you? You got any stories?
I was there. I was there for about a month and a half in '97. It was just I'd gotten my mechanics screwed up, so I was awful. End up going to Kansas City, but we got '98 with the franchise Diamondbacks opening up. We got Brent Brady and Damian Miller, and Brady. Yeah. Both of them were rookies, so they were just terrified of TK. And all I could do is listen to their stories and just start laughing. It was Brent Brady said one that he gets the start, swings and misses, falls down on a knee, and gets back to the dugout and just head dropped and just wants to disappear. And he said TK stops him at the top of the dugout and looks at me and goes, "Are you having any fun?" And Brent Brady looks at me and goes, "No, sir." And he goes, "Son, you are not a whole lot of fun to watch."
Yeah.
And that was it. And it was just like,
yeah.
I couldn't imagine. I was with him in '97, so I had like 8 years in. And I laughed at him one time when he had his whole body wrapped in ice in spring training after throwing like an hour of BP. And he's like, "What the hell are you laughing at?" And I went, not good. I'm bailing out.
Nothing, sir. Legend has it he used to wash the laundry for the Minnesota Timberwolves back in like '89 when their inaugural season, they played both at the Metrodome, and he just kind of took it upon himself to wash their laundry. Like, it was just the kind of guy he was. It was like he was the manager of a World Series winner 2 years before, and he's doing odd jobs for a fledgling NBA franchise 2 years after that.
Wow, I had not heard that story.
Yeah,
he's an eccentric character. He would have his Zubas on, and the cigar going, and man, he used to just puff down those cigars constantly, and just like old school all the way. But I think he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder too, because he kind of sniffed the big leagues a little bit, but didn't really get much playing time. And being a young manager, and then having all that success, I mean, he had a lot going on. So, but an interesting guy, certainly a baseball guy for sure. Baseball guys are generally kind of weird,
Yeah. What was it like replacing Brian Harper, because if people are listening to this show and not with a Minnesota tinge to it, probably be like Brian Harper, who gives a crap about Brian Harper, but kind of a cult hero and, caught in the 91 World Series for that team. And in fact, actually was on the Brewers team that you guys know hit early in 94. But the idea that I'm going for here is you guys had to replace kind of a guy who was an institution in Minnesota. And in fact, on the back of your card that I found, I think it's a 95 score that I'm showing to the camera here. It actually mentions that you guys had rookie catching duo, you and Derek Parks in 94, which is super rare. You talk about TK not being super fond of rookies. That had to be kind of a tumultuous season for you.
Well, in more ways than one. As far as the Brian Harper legend goes, you can't replace that. He's irreplaceable, in my opinion. And so I had that attitude, and the fans were good to me, and the media was great. I mean, there was no issues there as far as that. I just kind of played the game the way I was supposed to play. It was tumultuous in the fact that we were getting ready to go on strike as well, and the fact that we had kind of a losing record. And and Derek Parks was a rookie as well. And so I don't know. I mean, I think you ask any big leaguer and they'll just tell you, you just play the game, do the best you can. You try to play it one pitch at a time, and that's it. And that's all you can do. And I was fortunate enough to have the built-in training to kind of get over the last game and move on to the next one and play it one pitch at a time. You got to have a short memory, for certain things. And but the strike was tough. Ole, you remember that, right? I mean, that was kind of an interesting time.
How did they treat you guys in Minnesota? I heard was it the Reds got left and wherever they were playing at? I think Cincinnati got left. We were on the road in Denver. I was with the Braves in '94.
Wow.
Sounds like classic Marge shot.
Well, they at least flew us back to Atlanta, and we got off, and they're like, you can't go in to get any of your stuff.
So, wow. I've never heard those stories.
Yeah. And then since I heard Cincinnati got left completely wherever they were playing. So hypothetically they're playing in, I don't know, let's just say Houston. They got left there.
Man, no, I think we were at home and that was just it. And everything was over.
It was bizarre.
It was bizarre. And then even in spring training, and then, you hear about these guys that cross the line and the owners are going to try and start this new league with scab players or replacement players. And that became ugly. And then, trying to get the game back to where the fans liked us again, it just kind of all was that, when you and I played, that's just what we had to deal with. And then all the steroids and all that stuff. It was an interesting time.
So you were going into your second year in '95. So you had a job, you had a place to go. I was a free agent, so I signed with the Indians minor league, and so I'm in camp, and the Scabs are on the big field in Winter Haven, and people are looking at me, and I'm like, oh, I ain't crossing. I was like, this thing's going to end in May 1st or whatever. I'm not going to get a job until June. I was like, I might as well get a job now and just sit around here and wait and be playing minor league baseball until something opens up, because minor league.
Were they asking you? Did anybody approach you and ask you to cross?
They did not. I ended up playing with 3, 4, 5 guys later on, and man, it was still fresh in everybody's mind. We had a couple guys in Kansas City, and one of them was still doing the radio, and man, it was they were the plague. Nobody, nothing, no dinner, no nothing. Just stay over there. Don't talk to me. It was brutal. Did you guys have any?
We did. I had one, and I didn't actually know that the guy had been a scab player and became friends with him before I found out. And so what am I going to do? So it's tough, so you just never know. And, but still there's a bad taste, I think, from a lot of guys. And you hear the stories about the players that crossed, and some of them didn't have a choice or whatever. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, but they're certainly in the minority from the guys that held out. But I just remember going to the meetings in Arizona and, all the players getting together and talking about it. Where did you go to the one in Arizona when we all got together? Or was there another part that you went maybe in the South somewhere? Where are you from?
I was in Baltimore at that time. I grew up in Nebraska, but had moved to Baltimore early in my career. I thought we had something maybe in DC Seems like we had a big meeting with some big dudes and went out to dinner. It was like Cone, Bonilla, Ripken, and just I caught up with that. But, it wasn't I don't remember too much about what was going on during the time. I was just shocked that World Series had ended.
Yeah.
And we weren't getting anything resolved until who knew when, and we were the bad guys because we were making money. But, all you could do is explain, hey, the owners haven't ever opened up their real books. So nobody knows what they're making. And it's like, how do you argue with us? It's not our fault. But
right.
Is what it is. Let's I got one for you.
Mm-hmm.
Golly, it's been about 10 years. I wrote a book on major leaguers' favorite baseball stories.
Oh, wow.
So we're sitting around, you and I are having a beer somewhere, catching up. What's one of your favorite go-to on field, off field? Because we played in the era of no cell phone, so we could be whoever we were. Got one?
Yeah. I think one of my favorite memories was when I was playing for the Phillies in 2001, and I had to go back to the minor leagues in that season after being in the big leagues for 7 years straight. Started the season with the Reds, went to Louisville, and then I got traded to the Phillies, went to Scranton, got called up in September, and I'd been on the roster for about a month and hadn't gotten an at-bat yet. And so I was starting to sweat it because the season was coming close to an end. 9/11 had just passed, and my wife's due with our second child, so I might have to peel out. And I run down to the dugout. We're getting our asses kicked in Florida, and I tell Larry Bow, I ask him, I kind of tell him, hey, can you get me in there? And he goes, why? Is your wife having the baby? I'm like, with smart ass response, I'm like, well, no, but I go, I really want to get in the game, because I'm thinking to myself, man, if I don't get in a game, you look at the baseball card, there's going to be nothing there. And so I'm figuring I got to get a chance. So I'm going to go down and fight to see if I can get in the lineup. The game's kind of out of hand. And he goes, okay, fine. And I think he tried to say that Abreu doesn't get on, but he finally gives in and says, all right. So I get in the on deck circle, and I'm just like seeing the lights for the first time, because I've been hitting off the old, batting practice coaches and stuff. And Antonio Alfonseca's out there, and that dude throws gas, he's got 6 fingers.
The old
yeah,
6
exactly.
fingers. Yep.
Make a great swimmer or piano player, but he was a hell of a pitcher.
Yeah.
And so I I'm getting loose, and this is a big deal. I'm like, this is it, so I get up there and I end up working the count, of course, to 3-2. And I realize, okay, this is it. I'm either going to punch out or make it out, but I didn't want to walk, but I ended up getting a single. And I hit 1,000 that year. So as far as, I've got a lot of other stories and stuff like that, but that one kind of from a perspective of being a player, it always kind of stands out for me. It was like, that was my biggest at bat, the chance to hit 1,000, and I ended up hitting 1,000 that year. So
that's pretty good. Very nice.
But you know how it is. If we're drinking beers, I'm going to come up with just a story that I hadn't thought of in 5 years that, it's,
well,
how about you?
I should have gave
you
when I was writing the book, I was scouting for the Padres. So I was kind of walking around and be everybody up in the press box. And I'd go, look, I'll see you tomorrow, 24 hours notice, think about it. And some of them would, boom right away. For me, I don't know, I'd have to run to getting, about 8 mailboxes blown up in Baltimore every time I blew a save. And Ripken comes into the clubhouse one day, and he brings in the indestructible mailbox. And it was like, huge pole, bury it 8 feet down in the cement, the whole process. And I do that, blow a save about 2 nights later, and somebody had taken a chainsaw to the pole and just took it. I was like, all right. That's it. We're going PO box right now. But no, I had a couple of stupid, me walking bonds with the bases loaded 98.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was me. So
that was on purpose, right? That was intentional.
Yeah, we intentionally walked him. Yeah.
We had Buck. Skipper? Who was the
we
manager?
We had Buck on to talk about it a month ago.
Buck. It was Buck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that was, man.
Yeah. So I've got a couple, way off topic.
I've got one more, actually. We were in New York. I was playing for the Tigers in 97, and we had a team party, and we rented out I think it was the Hard Rock Cafe or something, or one of those places, Planet Hollywood. Yeah. And, we got gag gifts for everybody. And I was losing my hair, and I was kind of fighting it. I had a little bit of hair on top, but you could tell I was going bald. And so my gag gift was that hairspray, the stuff that you can spray on and stuff. So I'm like, hell yeah, man, I'm down with this. So I spray this stuff on it, come back, everybody's like, whoa, look at you, you've got hair. And I was, yeah, man, thanks. And so the night goes on, and we're having a good time. And then all of a sudden we end up cashing out. We're like, hey, let's go to Scores. So we all pile in the cabs, and this is the Ritzy Fritzy strip joint in New York. And I get to Scores, and all of a sudden, man, it starts to get warm in there. And all of a sudden the guys start laughing at me. And I'm like, what? And they're going, so I go to the bathroom, and I got this crap running down my face, like this black hair grease, And so that was good. I was a good sport about it. But yeah, it was pretty tough trying to get that stuff off. Once it gets on, it's like makeup. So it kind of ruined the evening. But it was a good gag gift. It was definitely a good one.
Oh, that's great.
They understood the assignment there. I do want to ask you, and I'm sure you don't get asked about this very much. The 1996 Twins, did you guys, before Kirby goes down, expect to be pretty good that year? Because, you bring in Molly, and, Kirby had a good 95 before it was prematurely ended by Denny Martinez. And again, to that 94 team, I mean, you guys were 7 games under 500. That's pretty impressive for where you might have expected to be. It feels like, we talk about the late 90s Twins as all these horrible teams, but 94 was decent, and 96 should have been pretty good too.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that we were making that move with Molly, and Molly had a great year that year.
He really did.
I want to say hit 340 or something as a 40-year-old.
341, I think. Yep.
Yeah, and he was amazing. He was a great teammate. And then we had Aguilera as a closer. Brad Radke was coming on the scene. Mm-hmm. Erickson, of course, was there. We had some younger pitchers. Herbeck. I think there was some thought that, especially with like Knobloch too, he was a hell of a player back then. He could hit, man.
Yeah, he had a crazy year too that year, I think.
He had a double every game, it seemed like.
Yeah,
but there was some hope, I think, and how did we finish that year? What was our? I
want to say you're like 78 and 84. That's me riffing right now. I'm going to look right now. You guys were 78 and 84. I remember.
That a boy. That a babe. Good memory.
Yeah, I missed you there. I was in Minnesota in 97 and Detroit in 96. So we were.
Yeah, and I missed you in Detroit. I was in Detroit. So we just missed each other.
Yeah, we did. Tell me a Kirby Puckett story.
Yeah, I was gonna say a Kirby or a Herbie or both. We got to have
one of my favorite human beings.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so we're in Boston, and Roger Clemens is pitching, and it's a day game, and the Rockets got the eye black on, and Kirby Puckett in the clubhouse in Boston. I'll never forget it. He said, "Sit back, relax, boys, and enjoy the fireworks. I'm about ready to take over." And he did. I mean, the dude went off, and it was just like anything that he said he was going to do, he did. Back that up. When we were in spring training in 94, he shows up. Back in the old days, those guys, they didn't hit in the off season. They just showed up to spring training and put on the batting gloves and started hitting. They were all kind of overweight and chunky and out of shape. And us young guys were trying to get in shape and fit and stuff. And so Puckett, he goes in the clubhouse, gets changed, puts on his gear. He's getting ready to hit. He has not hit since September the year before. Decides he's going to just put on his batting gloves and start hitting off the curveball machine. Dude, he's on the curveball machine, and he's missing every single pitch. And I mean, this is no joke. And it's almost like, is this guy done? I'm thinking to myself, he can't hit. And he's swinging and miss. And no problem. He didn't seem to really care, and just finally threw down the bat and walked away. And we have a game in a week. We're playing against this team from Japan. They come in, and man, first pitch, the Japanese pitcher throws him hanging curveball, boom, homer over the center field fence. The guy was amazing. And I try to tell people stories about him. And the one thing that impressed me most about Kirby Puckett was his fan appeal. No matter if we were in Cleveland, Milwaukee, who was a huge rival, or Oakland or New York, wherever, when they announced Kirby Puckett, everybody kind of gave him a little clap or sometimes a big cheer. You know, it was almost like you can't help but love the guy. Mm-hmm. He would sprint on and off the field. He would run hard to first base every single time. When there was a ground ball to second, when we were playing the Orioles, and Cal would come across the middle of the field and would be dragging his knuckles on the ground, trying to take out Puckett, and Puckett would just absolutely go in as hard as he could. And then they both crash and fall and get up and pat each other on the back, you know, stuff like that. Puckett would, I don't know if you remember when you were in Baltimore, but Puckett, every time he would see Cal, hey, just take one day off, man. Just one day off. He'd be yelling at Cal, you know, and Cal's like, come on, man. That's not going to help. Yeah, I can only imagine the stories you have about Cal. I mean, wow.
Yeah, it's the same thing. But I mean, I you know, Puckett just a little bit around the batting cages. And every time I'd face him, it was a nightmare because it was Vladimir Guerrero with, you know, better batting average, same kind of pop, you know, get him 0-2 real quick and then throw a breaking ball that is 59 feet, 6 inches, and he gets out there and hooks it down the left field line. I'm just sitting there going, no, no, you did not.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it was like, well, you're making me throw this thing 58 feet to see if you'll swing. It's like, it was unbelievable how good he was.
Matt,
yeah.
Matt, can we get one more question before we get you out of here?
Yeah, for sure.
So what I want to know is, you know, we talk a lot about 90s baseball, but how would your career be different if you would have played in the era where they have everything available to them now? Not only the stuff you're dealing with, but data, analytics, the good and the bad. You know, a lot of guys who played in your era, you know, we see Jeff Fry, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, lament a lot of what's going on in this era, but I think there's good and bad. The more you know, the more equipped you are to play. Maybe you're a better player because you know you can and can't do certain things. But how would your career be different if you were playing right now? Like, what do you think you'd be better at? What do you think would be different? Open-ended question.
Good one.
Yeah. So, I mean, offensively, I don't know if I might've been a better hitter because I think my swing was pretty choppy and kind of into out, you know, out to in, sort of a singles hitter. Mm-hmm. I might've had a better idea of how the swing should work because I don't think coaches, well, I know they didn't really teach hitting when we were there. They just kind of were there to give you flips and stuff like that. So I think I'd have a better understanding on how to hit, but catching wise, it would have affected me because my skills were about blocking and I had quick feet and I could throw really well. And now they've taken that and they've flipped it to where throwing doesn't really matter as much anymore and blocking doesn't matter as much. And they're being measured on their ability to steal pitches. So they're becoming less well-rounded as a catcher. And I think that would have affected me just because I had more intangibles and things that help keep me in the lineup as opposed to just stealing pitches and being able to, you know, work with pitchers. So, but I don't know. I mean, I would have found a way. I imagine I would have. I don't know. It's just my love for the game has been through the roof ever since I was 5. I wanted to be a big leaguer. And, you know, I've been involved in baseball ever since, even when I stopped managing. You know, I managed for 7 years too professionally, and I coached in the big leagues for a year. And so, you know, I worked for 10 different big league teams, and for 25 years I was in the game, and I still dream about it. I still miss it. I still miss the camaraderie, and that's why I enjoy being on your show. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah,
just to talk to Ole, and here's, you know, just to, you know, I've never met you before, but, you know, I've always had a lot of respect for you, and just the way you went about your game. You were, like I said, your mound presence was pretty special. You know, you had that disposition. We couldn't really tell how you were feeling, you know what I mean? Whereas a lot of guys, you can see how their mind, their attitude and their body language changes and things like that. So, but
thank you.
Yeah. No, it's an honor.
So hypothetically, you'd answer the phone if somebody called, though. Like you'd love to get back into it that way.
Oh, I don't know. It would just depend on the role. Managing, when I managed, I was sort of in that last stage of where managers could kind of do what they wanted to do. Yeah. It would be difficult for me to manage if there were these, you know, having to read all the charts and everything has to be done from what somebody in the front office is telling you to do. Right. I don't know if that would be, but, you know, I think coaching and mentoring and, you know, teaching little things about the game that are being lost in the fact that most of the guys like me are not being called. They're getting spit out right now. So I'm afraid that the game is losing some of that luster, that beauty of that was being passed down. Like you, Ole, I'm sure you learned from guys like from way before. Like I've learned, all the stuff that they tell you, like Jimmy Pearsall, I would learn from him. And,
we mentioned
Jim
him
Palmer
last week.
even.
We mentioned Jimmy Pearsall last week. Fear Strikes Out.
Wow. He was such a beauty. Pearsall, we learned so much from him in the Cubs organization. And, we all thought he was crazy. He would say some things that was certainly inappropriate, especially in these days and ages, or this day and age. But still, we respected him and we listened to him. And a lot of the stuff that he said, I mean, hell, he played alongside Ted Williams and played it for the Red Sox. I mean, so nowadays it seems like players that have had the experience are somehow being pushed away because it just doesn't make sense to the folks that are making decisions. They don't understand it. They don't know what it feels like to get out there and compete. I mean, how do you get a guy out? How do you figure out a way to make an adjustment at the plate and hit the ball the other way a few times before they stop shifting on you?
Right.
It's just boggling, but yeah.
Well,
anyways, I still love the game. It's just changed.
Yeah.
No, left a lot of meat on the bones if people are watching. We didn't talk about Scott Erickson's no-hitter. We didn't talk about the 1994 season and Kent Herbeck, his career coming to an end with the.
No, let's talk about that. That's important.
I don't want to change you. I mean, we're in overtime.
No, that's
right now.
okay. That's okay. We're good. We're good. I don't want to. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm good. I just didn't want to misuse your
Scott
time.
Erickson's no-hitter.
So funny story.
Give it to us.
I met Scott Leyes in Plymouth, Minnesota, where I lived before this. I managed a UPS store. And I said, "Oh, Scott Leyes, I'm a big fan." And I told this story on a show recently that when guys who were not stars but were big leaguers are recognized, sometimes they give you a look like, "Oh, do you just know I'm a big leaguer, but you don't know anything about me?" Well, Ole said he's impressed because he just likes that people are that with it that much. But what I said was, in the first inning, you caught a screaming line drive for one of the first outs of Scott Erickson's no-hitter. And he looks right at me. And he goes, "Billy Spires." And from that point on, we were just like this. So, I was 8 years old when you guys played that game. I had it on a VHS. I probably watched it 300 times. I could remember the Treasure Island Casino and Tires Plus ads. I had that game memorized. I still talk to Dick Bramer about it. He actually lives in the same city. He lives in the same city I live in, which is kind of cool. You're talking to somebody who was a crazed Twins fan starting in 1993. Now I cover the team, so I'm not as much of a fan. But that game to me is one of the first vivid memories I have of this is what it's all about. No hitters and trying to finish those off and just being a bulldog like Scott Erickson was that night.
Yeah, well, funny you should say that. When I was just recently in Arizona, a fan of a teammate of mine came up and actually had 2 ticket stubs to that game and gave me one of the ticket stubs to the no-hitter game. Yeah, it was pretty special. It was weird. He didn't have much control or command that night. He was working his fastball and his slider. He was shaking me off a lot. He was a bear to work with. He was hard to work with. You couldn't talk to him between innings. But after about the 5th inning or during the 5th inning, I thought, man, something special's happening here. Cause like you said, the ball that Leyes caught, there were some other plays in there and everything just kind of seemed to go our way.
Becker caught one to start the game. And then Herbeck had one that he kind of kicked back and forth. And then he made the play at first on his own, a 3-U.
Yes.
That was,
and his hat kind of got a little twisted, maybe.
Yeah.
A little discombobulated.
Keep in mind too, I feel like he's the underappreciated defensive first baseman of that era because I don't think he ever won a Gold Glove because there was Mattingly and all those guys, but boy, did he deserve a bigger look than he got.
He loved it. He used to tell me, "Wally, anybody can play first base, but not too many people can play it well." And he was right, man. And he was a good first baseman. He had all the moves, great glove. But no, Erickson was just effectively wild and had his fastball and his sinker and his slider. He was just sinker, slider. And then 7th inning, 8th inning. And then the last hitter was Gregg Vaughn, who's from my hometown. Mm-hmm. And
that was a scary play too.
Dude, that was, I thought we had it. I raised my hands like this. And all of a sudden, Mears and Alex Cole go running for it. I'm thinking, oh no. And then Cole ended up with it. Yeah. And Mears goes rolling. And that was it. Yeah, it was fun. The only thing that I look back on, it kind of sucked for me is that I'm expecting the pitcher to come to the catcher and we're going to celebrate. But Herbeck blocks me out and Erickson goes for Herbeck and gives him the hug. And I'm like the last man out. Yeah.
T-Rex boxing you out there.
He boxed me out. Yeah.
Oh,
no, great. That was my career highlight. And you ask any catcher, a no-hitter in the big leagues, it's pretty special. And I was there for Milton's no-hitter.
Yeah, you were on the same stadium, but you didn't. That, I have to be honest, and I don't mean to be a jerk, that Angels lineup might be one of the worst that was ever no-hit, don't you think?
One of the worst lineups that was ever
it was very much like a getaway day lineup. I know it was a Saturday morning.
It was a getaway day. Yeah, wasn't it? Or
but it was like Troy Gloss, and then it was guys like Orlando Palmeiro, right. And even the guy who caught. I was expecting to see that you caught that day, and it was Brett something.
Hemphill,
yeah. A guy and I knew everybody playing in the big leagues then. I do not remember Brett Hemphill. I don't remember if like Jeff Devannon. I might be thinking a little too late.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah.
Just right. And again, I'm not trying to say these guys weren't good, but it was a very much a September when you're 57 and 82 lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess I don't know.
Yeah, that team.
Now I feel like a jerk.
Also, the Angels. No, it's okay. The Angels team. Or Orlando Palmeiro got thrown out of a game. I think Tim Sheeta was the umpire, but he, after a called third strike, dropped the bat at home plate and walked away, and Sheeta threw him out. But what he didn't know is we were in such a bad hitting slump with the Angels that we decided to use one bat. So we were sharing a bat. And so he got reinstated back in the game, and the bat ended up, I think, in the Hall of Fame. So yeah, we were trying to to change matters. When you mentioned Orlando, that made me think of that time he got tossed and then let back.
You guys got no hit using the same bat?
No, it was a different story. It was a different game. That would have been the worst.
That's going to be a classic.
Yeah.
I do have the lineup here. Jeff Devannon, so I remember correctly there. Orlando Palmeiro, Todd Green playing left field. Yeah, Todd Green, the catcher, playing left field, batting third. Troy Gloss, who was obviously very good. Steve Decker, Matt Luke, Brett Hemphill, Trent Durrington, and Andy Sheets.
Okay.
So yeah. I mean, I feel bad that I said that they weren't very good, but
but you have a point.
Was that Joe Madden's team too? Were you playing for Joe Madden at that time?
Terry Collins, I think, was managing at that point.
Okay, because I know Joe took over at some point, or was that the beginning?
At the end of the season? Yeah, Terry resigned, and that was at the end of the year, and that was in '99. Am I right with that? Yeah, and then the Angels hired Sosha, and Madden became the bench coach in 2000.
And I think you guys were playing early because the Gopher football team was playing that night.
Didn't we used to play morning games there, like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock? I remember. Was there ever anything that?
First pitch that day was early, like an 11. Well, this is noon, but I feel like it was 11, but still like super early because the Gophers had to play that night.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
And I think I remember playing in Minnesota where there was even games earlier than that. Cal Ripken, when he'd come up to the plate, every single first at bat, good morning, he'd say. First time we were playing the Orioles, I was catching in '94, and he comes up, it's a night game. He goes, good morning. And I'm like, oh, that's Cal Ripken. I go, and I didn't know what to say, but I did. I paused and I went, it's a night game. And he goes, oh, every game feels like a day game here to me. And I can only imagine. I mean, he played, every 2000 and something. But yeah, you look up at the Metrodome, you don't know if it's day or night.
Oh,
did you hate the dome?
That's walking out of those, that or the Kingdom, you walk out. Yeah. It's like, it's still light outside.
Right.
No,
I didn't really hate it. It was for me, it was hard to see as a hitter. It didn't have much of a backdrop, but a lot of guys loved hitting there. I certainly didn't like the pop-ups. It was hard on your legs as a player, going from turf to grass. But hey, it was the big leagues, and it was the Metrodome, and you had the baggy and right. There was certainly the first year we were there, I think they took down the plexiglass.
Yes, they did. 94.
The plexiglass came down.
Yep. Yeah. Did last one? I promise. You mentioned you were still playing baseball. Are you still crouching, or are you playing in the field?
No, I only catch, and it's kind of all I want to do. I don't like playing on the other side of the field at all. No, I like being looking that way. Yeah.
That's what I love about the game. The defense has the ball, and the catcher gets to look the different direction than everybody else. It's unlike any other sport. It's the greatest sport that is available on God's green earth. But hey, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and going into overtime.
My pleasure. That was great.
Awesome. Matt, that was awesome.
Holy, yeah, great. Awesome. Thanks, guys. That was fun.
The invitation is always there. Just whenever you're ready, come on.
Sounds good. Sounds
a lot
good.
Of meat left
great
on the
topics,
bone here.
Guys.
Thank you.
Stuff, guys.
Great job. That's it for me, Brandon Warren, Gregg Olson, Matt Walbeck. Check us out again next week. This is That 90s Baseball Pod powered by Access Twins. We'll catch you. Peace.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.